I'm Jeff Cohn of Suburban Issues, and thank you very much for being with us today. Today I'm going to have some fun with an interview of a person that lives in our viewing area and a person that I've been knowing for some years. She and her husband are both authors, and I thought it would be very intriguing to talk to a young author, and a new author, I should say, and a young author, and learn about the book that she's written about. So today I have with me Donna Bassette. Thank you very much for being with me, Donna.
Thanks for having me.
It's a great pleasure to have you, and I'm really excited about talking about your project in terms of your new book by way of Egypt, and to see what motivated you to do this great work that you've done.
Well, I appreciate it.
Good. Yeah. So I really enjoyed the fact that you sort of took fictional and married it with non-fictional. Mm-hmm. And so what influenced you to do that? That's I think was something that was very intriguing to me, is that most times when people write a historical account, mm-hmm. They take history and they write chronologically the story of history, as you just said. But what made you blend the two? Now, I know that you said that it may be fascinating, but what made you do that? Was there something that intrigued you to do that, or?
Well, yes. As I said, history for most people is dry material. Mm-hmm. And I didn't think that if I just wrote about Egypt, that I could really make it exciting for young people. Okay. And so I really wanted to make it exciting. Okay. And I one of my favorite authors is Jean Auel, mm-hmm. and she wrote Clan of the Cave Bear. I don't know if you're familiar with that movie, and but it was historical fiction as well. And there was a movie actually made out of off of that. And what she did was she took the prehistoric times, mm-hmm. and she brought that to life, and she allowed you to experience what it was like to be part of a clan, and what their rules were and their protocols were, and what it would be like if you got, kicked out of the clan and caught. And there's a story of a young lady in that who actually gets kicked out of the clan, and she's on her own, and she has to live life, and she makes friends with the animals, etc. Mm-hmm. But it's very detailed in terms of the time, right. and what's going on in those times, and how the landscape were, and all that. And so I used her kind of as my personal mentor, mm-hmm. and I kind of took that style. Okay. Yeah.
All right. So did your education or your own, I know you talked about experiencing going down to the South, mm-hmm. Did any of those have any particular bearing on how you wrote this book, outside of some of the stories that you tell in mm-hmm. the book? Was there anything that sort of like, I'm going to write this book because of this particular experience?
Not really. I mean, the characters, some of the things that happen in the book, such as the fact that they lost their grandfather, right. and their reactions to it, those were personal losses for me. Okay. And I took that from the loss of my grandmother, actually, right. As well as the loss of my grandfather, and how that struck me as a young child, and how I dealt with that. Mm-hmm. So it's about taking pieces of my emotional life, mm-hmm. and putting that in the book. Okay. So I did do that, mm-hmm. but in terms of my education and how that impacted my writing, not so much, right. As my emotional life and my upbringing and the things that happened to me as a kid. Because I actually fell in love with writing, I would say probably about 5th grade, right. When I got introduced to poetry and E.E. Cummings, mm-hmm. and some of these other famous right. poetry writers. And I also fell in love with Greek mythology. Oh. And so since then, I had been writing poetry. Okay. And I did it for fun at first, and then when I got to high school, I would say I wrote more as a release. I think most people can relate to this. When you're in high school, lots of things happen. Mm-hmm. Your friends start getting into drugs. Mm-hmm. there's sex, there's all sorts of peer pressures to do all sorts of things that you know you should not do. And so for me, I took those things. I didn't want to be a part of that. And also, my mom and dad, my stepdad, separated.
Okay.
And so there were a lot of things that I was going through at the time. And so I used poetry as my release because I wasn't going to hang out and be pressured into sex at that age. You know, I'm a 13, 14-year-old kid.
Right.
I'm not going to give in to that pressure in the drugs and stuff. And so what I found myself being alone a lot.
Okay.
It was by choice because I could have chose to be with some of my friends.
Sure.
I elected not to, but in doing so, I was lonely sometimes. And so I would take that time to express myself in poetry. And I would write how I felt. I would write about the challenges. I would write about God. I would write about so many things, my dreams, etc. And that was my release. And so I continued to write poetry.
So journaling became like almost like your exercise towards authorship too.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of my path. I didn't know it because I used it to bare my soul, so to speak, and I felt better after doing it and reading through my poem sometimes years later, and I said, oh wow, I was really going through some things back then.
Great.
Yeah.
You know, the reason why I asked that, and I want young authors to hear that, is because you know, it's important for people to understand that everyone can be a writer.
Yeah.
And everybody has a story.
Yeah.
And you know, it's important for people to realize that if the young people are journaling right now, they can take what they're journaling and turn it into a story.
They
and
can,
it could be a bestseller.